Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 40 today for this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in Season 3. If you guys did miss the previous episode, the opening round of this brand new season, then be sure to go check that out before you see this one at the Bahrain Grand Prix, because that was one big stab into the unknown and a very exciting first race. Plenty of battles all the way up and down the field from the top guys all the way to the tail end of the points and out the points in a very, very tight midfield. Of course, we've had no R&D reset from Season 2 to Season 3, so everything is super tight. And considering our team is bankrupt and in debt at the moment, we launched our car with a very bare bones, barren looking machine. We did very well, I think. Limited the damage, scored points, both myself and our new teammate Sebastian Vettel, who came out of retirement to sign for our team. I think that's a very solid first race, ahead of McLaren, who I pegged to be a dark horse favourite for this year's championship. They did not make the most of what seems to be a pretty quick car underneath them. Pierre Gasly, he was leading the way, but fell away in the race after mistakes, and Lando Norris was confined to P4 behind the two Red Bulls, and a surprise winner of Oscar Piastri in the Ferrari. Of all people, of all teams, Ferrari won that opening race. If that is what's to come in this season, full of surprises and potential twists and turns, this is going to be a really great one. And that's before we even get fully going as a team, before we actually get out this debt and can actually start upgrading our car. Thankfully, into this episode though, for Jeddah, no team above us in the R&D chart have brought upgrades to the Jeddah, and it seems like behind us, only AlphaTauri and Alfa Romeo have brought a minor update. You've got to remember the scaling of this R&D chart. We've zoomed in so much from the performance index of 900 to 700, whereas previously we had a scale of, I think, 400 to 900. So that's a really tiny, probably only one minor upgrade for Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri. So that's actually a benefit to us, because obviously, as I stated, you know, if we're not bringing upgrades and other teams are, we're just going to start falling back and being slower and slower as the races come. But for this episode, into Jeddah, a place where previously in Season 1 and Season 2 we've gone very well, myself and my AI teammate, it seems like the car is really suited to the streets of Jeddah. So I think we can actually do some really good work. I mean, need to, because we basically need to make the most of this now, because in later episodes, maybe even literally as early as next episode into Australia, if the teams above us, Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, even the teams just directly around us like Alpine, who were quite strong in qualifying at least around Bahrain, if they were to bring at least just one major upgrade, we're going to fall down in terms of pace so much. So this is a massive blessing from the F1 gods and the whole F1 paddock that no one's really brought some concrete big upgrades. So let's make the most of it, try and go for another race like Bahrain where we can both score solid points in the mid-pack of the top 10 to limit the damage and maybe even do better, because actually if you look at Season 1 and Season 2, I myself and my AI teammate did better at Jeddah compared to Bahrain. Bahrain is a very difficult circuit to go to your first race of the season, whereas when you come to Jeddah, as long as you have a good compromise set up for the straight line speed and enough downforce in the corners, I think you can go quite well. And on the F1 game with the slipstreaming, we know it's a really great race usually here in the game, and so that's also going to play into the factor of AI battling each other, slowing each other up, and that could invite potentially some moves in places for myself and Sebastian Vettel. But we're now through into Q2. George Russell topping the session, making up for that Q1 exit at Bahrain in the first episode. That was a massive shocker, and there's another shock here in this episode. It's another big name for one of the top teams, because Max Verstappen is knocked out in Q1 here at Saudi Arabia. That is a howler for him in the same way it was for George Russell. Russell found it very hard and only just about made it into the points in that first race. Max will have to do the same and try and really fight back to get into the top 10 and score points. And in a 16 race calendar, every race matters. So that's already a bit of a blow and on the back foot for Verstappen early days. and he's going to have to hope that the pace that Red Bull showed around Bahrain is here again for him to cut his way through. But speaking about qualifying exits, well, we exited, both myself and Vettel, in Q2 at Bahrain. So what can we do around Jeddah? Spoken a lot about potentially this being a better circuit for our car and having the performance to maybe do better, or at least definitely the same as Bahrain. Well, that is going to also come through on Saturday. Over one lap, can we get through into the top 10 and break into Q3? Vettel is there already, I believe, and we are through as well by the skin of our teeth, because Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri was so close to knocking us out. We hardly improved on that second run, whereas Vettel was a bit more comfortable having 2/10 there into the top 10. But that is already awesome. That is improvement and progress from last episode, the first round. But like I said, that's not down to our car improving, because hardly any of the F1 teams have improved this race weekend. That is just more so that this circuit suits our car better, as I alluded to, and this is the proof. We're both through into the top 10 shootout. It's a big blow for Ferrari, and Leclerc, he is knocked out, and last race's race winner is through. So Piastri already doing a massive number to maybe try and establish himself as the number one, even though he's the junior in the Scuderia Ferrari team. Albon, my old teammate, he only just made it through, so I don't know what's going on there with Red Bull. Both of them lacking a bit of pace here over one lap, whereas McLaren and Mercedes are locked in. Russell and Hamilton checkerboarded with the two McLarens, so that might be an interesting battle, and maybe those two teams fighting rather than Red Bull in there. Alpine with Perez will be very happy. Checo doing the work and showing why Alpine wanted to sign him as a spearhead of their new project. But now Q3 is well underway, and we're starting our first flying lap, going through these very tight and twisting Sector 1. Maximum commitment, just a few lifts of throttle and dab of the brakes to get us through the first sector. Across the line, it's not a particularly amazing lap because we went 2/10 quicker in Q2. So some time to find. Not for Sebastian Vettel though, because look at the top left as we're now here on the second run. The checkered flag's fallen. Sebastian Vettel's nowhere to be seen on that bottom half of the ladder. So that must mean right now as it stands, before other people finish their second flying laps, Vettel is in the top 5 on this grid. Oh my days, what a performance this would be from him. We've come through the final bend. It's going to be just over 4/10 gained. Where is that going to get us? Across the line. And it's going to keep us staying put in P10 because the pace improvement from everyone else in the top 10 was ridiculous compared to Q2. But the story of the day, the man of the hour, Sebastian Vettel. How on earth has he done that? He is in P4. He's on the second row on the grid. And he must have been really in the zone because he's nearly about 5/10 ahead of us in terms of lap time. So ridiculous time and performance from our new teammate Vettel. Really been reinvigorated, it would seem, off the back of Bahrain after scoring some decent solid points. I guess just finding confidence in the car and liking this circuit with our car. He's done a mega job. Alexander Albon though, it's another pole position, so it's 2 poles for Albon so far in his... So it's 2 poles for Albon so far back at the Red Bull helm, and it's a massive performance versus his teammate Verstappen, who remember got knocked out in Q1. Big improvement from George Russell to be there on the front row. He's made up for his poor qualifying at Bahrain, whilst his teammate Hamilton down in P8. So some actually big differences from teammate to teammate, because the same thing can be seen with Lando Norris there in P3 and Gasly P7. So some big discrepancies. You know, clearly just a bit of a mixed up quali and some massive track evolution, because I did not have 5 more tenths on the table compared to Vettel. So I don't know, this is either going to be a real struggle for me in the race versus Vettel, or Vettel's massively outperformed the car over one lap and we might be seeing him fall away and fall backwards towards us in the race. Either way, it's going to be very intriguing with Albon versus Russell and Norris, the new gen in Formula 1. All they're missing is Leclerc really, and they have the full Twitch quartet there, the very spearhead of this grid tomorrow. Let's go to Sunday.
We're here today on the shores of the Red Sea in the Lower Hijaz Mountains to visit one of the newest circuits on the Formula 1 calendar. We're in Jeddah, home to what we all hope is going to be a thrilling Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So let's take a look at the topographical map of the Jeddah street circuit. As you can see, a number of challenging corners for the drivers to master here. We'll see just how much the teams have benefited from their time spent in practice this weekend. And like many street circuits, this track has the potential to punish drivers that get it wrong. Let's hope we avoid any safety cars today. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Alex Albon leads us away from pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Vettel, Carlos Sainz and Perez, Gasly, Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, the owner driver, Tsunoda, Bottas, Liam Lawson and Leclerc, Mick Schumacher, Ocon, Kevin Magnussen and Max Verstappen, Schwartzman, Drugovich, Théo Pourchaire and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
So we got potentially a very exciting race on our hands, especially focusing on our teammate Sebastian Vettel on the second row in our car. I don't know how he's done it. I'm still baffled how he gained 5/10 on us, but you know, to be fair, we've seen sometimes the AI simulation times and the track evolution, as it were, at the end of the session is sometimes so ridiculous. So I don't know, maybe we're going to see him fall away and fall back towards us in this race. I guess we're about to find out, but Jeddah is always just such an exciting one on the F1 game with the slipstreaming and just how much racing action you can get down those back straights into that final hairpin and even into here, turn one ahead of us. Russell has arrived in that Mercedes after a very tricky Bahrain, so that's going to be an interesting battle versus Albon in the Red Bull. And then can McLaren actually pull it together and show their true pace today? And on top of that, so many other questions still to be answered about the true pace of all these teams here on this grid as we go to 5 red lights now for round number 2 at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We are well underway and it's a slow start for us and Pierre Gasly into turn 1. Where are we going to be able to go? Down the inside of Piastri it is, on the outside for turn 2, trying to get the car rotated, and we do manage to get the Australian, the P9, up ahead. Bit of a roadblock with Hamilton and Gasly going side by side, and we just narrowly miss making contact with Hamilton's gearbox, so we slow the car down just about with the heavy fuel in sector 1. Let's immediately cut to a replay though and just show you what happened at the front of this grid, because Russell got a great getaway and actually did go side by side. It was 3 abreast for P1 from the top 3 drivers. That's amazing. Red Bull versus Mercedes versus McLaren, but Albon ultimately keeps P1. Russell remains in second with Lando Norris in third. Sebastian Vettel though, look at him, he's maintained P4 and he's actually a lot closer to the McLaren than he is to Carlos Sainz behind in P5 in the Haas. Perez pressurising the Haas in P5. Hamilton P7 ahead of Pierre Gasly, and we're trying to stick with that fight and stick with the top 10. Staying in DRS is so crucial around here because you're going to save a bit of ERS as well, and if any of the cars ahead of us are going to start to squabble, they're going to lose time to each other in the corners, and then you can come knocking with DRS just like we're going to do with Pierre Gasly. No DRS needed though as we go right to the wall on the left hand side there. The Frenchman gives us a good old squeeze back into turn 1, locks up though. It's a big error from Pierre Gasly's AI, and we drift through turns 2 and just manage to keep the car going in a straight line to get that overtake done for P8, and behind Piastri looking to get Gasly after that mistake he made, but the McLaren ultimately will stay in P9 and the 2 Ferraris are locked in nose to tail. Leclerc surely is going to have a go with Piastri and once again trying to assert his leadership in the Ferrari team, but it was a very sketchy turn 1 that, because we nearly got crashed crashed into by Gasly with that lock-up, and then I did quite well to opposite lock drift the car through the exit to actually keep it going, and now we can focus on trying to close that 2-second gap to Lewis Hamilton, as we've got Albon still leading the way ahead of Russell, Norris, Vettel in P4, but for how much longer? Because on lap 3, here goes the Spaniard, first time with DRS, Sainz round the outside in the new Repsol Haas car. He just can't quite do it. Vettel trying to hang on for P4 for dear life. Is this the beginning of the end of Vettel's high position? Because, as I said, I don't know how he found that time over one lap, but maybe the race pace isn't there, and Vettel will just fall away. But for now, he actually does very well to shove Sainz off the racing line, get the elbows out in that tricky section where you have to go very much single file for most of it. You can just manage 2x2, I guess, in the first part, but eventually you have to kind of give up the position. But there's going to be plenty more opportunity in this race for people to make passes, and Sainz is going to take his on the very next lap, lap 4, and this time he has so much more overspeed with the DRS to go cleanly sailing past Sebastian Vettel into turn 1 and get his Haas up into P4. So is that going to be the beginning of the end for Vettel's run in the top 4 and the top flight? Because now we have arrived in the scene, and like I said, we may actually join Vettel and meet him on circuit as he falls backwards and I go forwards, as now Hamilton ahead of us. Bit of a twitchy rear end there for Lewis. Oh, the tyres screaming out already on the mediums. If we go for a move, we send it round the outside, have a little look, can't quite make the pass happen in that right-hander. That would have been some sort of miracle, but we are going to still apply the pressure to Hamilton as Gasly does the same to us. Both of us with DRS obviously on the cars ahead, and now we're getting in a bit of a train that it's just all about trying to stick with it, not lose too much time when you try and go for an attempt like that, and just go again. And we will go again into the final corner, both of us with DRS, but we're using plenty of battery to go around the outside of our previous championship rival, the reigning champ, the 8-time world champion Lewis Hamilton right now in our alternate F1 universe. We go for the move, we've got it up into P7, and Gasly may just try and follow us through. We go defensive, try and close the door on Hamilton, and instead Lewis will go side by side with Pierre Gasly, and Gasly has got the better of him, so he's up into P8, so Hamilton loses 2 positions and is showing no real pace in this race versus his teammate George Russell, as you now watch Schumacher get frustrated by Tsunoda with a big wall of defense from the AlphaTauri to maintain P12 behind these 2 Ferraris. But like we saw at the end of Season 2 in those last couple of races, Hamilton showing a bit of lack of pace now versus George Russell. He may have just about managed to win the World Championship on the last race in Abu Dhabi, but in terms of the pace and the form he was showing in most of those last races, it's carried over, and Russell is the main man right now in this monster Mercedes AMG team in Season 3 as he keeps the pressure on Alexander Albon. It's been about 2-3 tenths this entire race, but still no difference and no break in the top 3 order. There will be a difference though for P4 and 5 potentially. Sebastian Vettel coming back at Carlos Sainz, so this is promising for our team and for Seb that he's actually got enough pace to come back at Sainz. He hasn't just walked off into the distance, and Vettel with a nice dive on the inside. He's now got the outside line and should be able to slot in for P4. Sainz will have to tuck in and accept the P5, and as we catch them, we make a mistake in sector 1. It's a big tank slapper, and we do well just to control the car and not spin that straight into a wall, and we come now back on circuit side by side with Hamilton having given up a position to Pierre Gasly. So it's easily done. We made an error just like that in Season 2 in qualifying, but in the race that is not what you want, and so we have to go again and try and close back up to the McLaren. We were so close to that train of Sergio Perez. I think this fight might go on the whole race from P4 down to P9 potentially, and we need to rejoin the fighters now. The other Alpine though of Esteban Ocon not having such a good time versus Sergio Perez, because Esteban Ocon has just span it into sector 2 and is out of this Grand Prix, and his crash will bring out a full course safety car early on in this race. On lap 6, this is now an important call to make, because our team asked us about a change of strategy. And do we want to pit in? Well, they're saying actually lap 7, so next lap, because that must mean Sebastian Vettel, his side of the garage, they're calling him in on this lap, so they don't want us to double stack. But if we're not going to double stack, there's no point even pitting on lap 7. We're not going to come in because I don't want to double stack, because if we double stack under this safety car, we're going to be pushed down at least a good 4 or 5 positions, and it's pretty much the same as maybe not pitting now, because we've still got a lot of this race to go. I reckon we could go a good, 7 more laps on these medium tyres. So I know we're going to be under the safety car for 2 laps, but I think we can actually still do some good work without getting a free pit stop here. And many other drivers here in the top 10 have decided the same thing. Russell now is the one that leads the way. Hang on, so he missed that. He must have overtaken Albon just as maybe the safety car was coming out potentially. So Russell's the one that leads the way from Albon in P2. Then, funny enough, the 2 McLarens find themselves in P3 and 4 now. Very lofty heights. We're in P5. Hamilton behind in P6. Piastri, Bottas, Lawson, Schwartzman and Stroll and Pourchaire all yet to pit. Sainz and below have opted for the free pit stop, but there's still so much of this first stint to go for us on the medium tyres. I think the rest of us believe that we can still make this work without having the free pit stop. So here we go then. We're going green for racing once again on lap 8 onto 9, and we're looking to make a move early doors on Pierre Gasly into turn 1. Gasly will come back at us though, does well to try and annoy me through the apex of turn 2, but we're not having any of it, and we get up into P4. Meanwhile ahead, look at the top left, Albon has a penalty, a 5-second penalty.
Okay, it's not good news, I'm afraid. Seems like an engine issue.
And now we've got an engine issue. It's all kicking off here as we go on this restart. Our engine is stuck in lean mixture right now on the fuel flow. So that's going to be a massive detriment to engine power. And Gasly is now licking his lips probably behind as we make an error as well. A driver error as we go too wide in that corner, inviting the pressure almost from Pierre Gasly and also the cars behind of Hamilton and Piastri, even the Ferrari. And down this straight, this is not going to be a great time because Gasly's going to get a great run on us. But as we go down this straight, deploying all the ERS in the world, my engineer's going to tell me the issue is actually solved now. They fixed it and we're back to standard fuel flow. So immediately we'll hope to come back at Gasly, but that was a really nice sequence of corners side by side through that entire left and right. Such a fast sequence of corners, so easy to get it wrong when you're side by side. But now we're looking for the re-overtake. Gasly though doing really well, and meanwhile behind it's side by side for Hamilton and Piastri. Piastri cannot get the Mercedes car, but we can still be neck and neck with Gasly now. It's a drag race down to turn 1, and with the fuel flow all fine, we're going to be able to get him. Meanwhile for P1, it's a battle between Russell and Albon. Albon looking to get back into the lead of this Grand Prix. Remember though, he's got a 5-second penalty allegedly for whatever reason. I think potentially it may have been some sort of speeding under the safety car. That's the only thing I can imagine, to be honest. But he's got a 5-second penalty, so that's going to be really good for Russell and Lando Norris in terms of they won't have to worry about him, to be honest, as he's going to lose 5 seconds the next round of pit stops. Gasly we're watching on now, having a go at Piastri, so he actually lost the position to myself, Hamilton and Piastri. It was another big lock-up, I believe. It's still early days in the season, of course, but it does seem like from that mistake he made at Bahrain, losing the lead, he's maybe already lost a bit too much focus compared to his teammate Lando up in P3, looking to make a move on George Russell now here. No DRS available yet, but it may not be needed. The McLaren pulls to the right-hand side. Russell locks up and goes straight on. He went defensive, but then got it all crossed up. Then he went completely straight on into the wall, managed to save himself and carry on in this race, but he's now lost the position to ourselves, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in the top 3 of this race, behind the guys who have already made a pit stop under the safety car. They're having a bit of a battle. Sainz gets up into P10 just ahead of Valtteri Bottas, although the Alfa Romeo is making it a real challenge for him. Alfa Romeo, one of the few teams upgrading into this race weekend, and it's showing a little bit because Bottas giving it a real good go. Sainz is going to I nearly thought he was going to pull off that amazing overtake, but no, he actually sticks behind the Alfa Romeos. Now we've got a second safety car in this race, and that is going to be to the advantage for the rest of us, because now the rest of us have a chance at a free pit stop, although the likes of Sainz, Vettel as well, and everyone who was behind them who'd already made a pit stop, they will still get a bit of track position. But this is why this safety car is out. It's a mistake, a big mistake for the new Williams driver, the rookie in Formula 1, Schwartzman, into the wall in the Williams car. A lot of debris on circuit, and so no surprise the safety car's out. But now we're into the pits, and Albon and Russell have to serve a 5-second penalty. So we know Albon's penalty was there. I didn't see Russell had a 5-second penalty as well. So I wonder, actually, maybe did they make contact with each other whilst fighting for the lead and they gave each other a 5-second penalty for an altercation or whatever. But it's going to result in, well, effectively from that lead pack, it's now the McLaren ahead. We're effectively second in that pack. Albon's directly behind us, and then it's Piastri because Russell's fallen even behind him. So those of us that just pit, we're now behind a load of cars, but we're on fresher hard tyres. But it will be the Spaniard Carlos Sainz in the Repsol Haas that leads the way, from Sebastian Vettel in second in our car, Leclerc third, Perez is P4 in the Alpine, Tsunoda and Drogovic quite high up. Verstappen now is back into this race because he's also made that pit stop. He's going to the end, so he's P7, so he's fully back in this one now for points paying positions. Schumacher P8, Lando, myself, Albon, Piastri, Gasly, Russell, all down the order, P9 to P14. It may seem like now those guys who made the pit stop onto the first safety car are in a much better position, but remember, we've now got so much fresher hard tyres, and with the tyre wear rate around here at a street circuit like this with so much force through the compound at high speed, potentially right at the end of this race we could be in a great position to pick off some cars ahead. But we've also got each other then as well to worry about, so we've got Lando right ahead of us to get past before we can now have a go at everyone else on older hard tyres as we go green and racing once again here in Jeddah. Lap 14, Sainz leads the way from Vettel in second. We dive down the inside to get the overtake on the McLaren, hopefully over the curb, plenty of it, and that's going to upset the car a bit. We don't get quite the momentum we wanted through turns 2 as well to finish the move off, and instead we have to stick behind the McLaren for maybe another half lap, as it's very hard to do anything in sector 1. Up the road though, Drogovic, I think that is, in the Alfa Romeo, playing a bit of a slow game here, backing Verstappen and Norris into us. I don't know if the Alfa Romeo has an issue with its car. It looks like it, because we steam by the McLaren. We get boxed in, tap the wall briefly, because it's all so close, and we shoot one down the inside of Verstappen, and it's not many times you catch Verstappen napping, but we have done there, as Verstappen himself has a 5-second penalty. What is it with the 5-second penalties? It must be something with speeding under the safety car. It can't be incidents, because that's now no coincidence that both Albon and Verstappen had penalties having gone into a safety car period. So Verstappen must have been speeding, and I'm now going to conclude that Albon and Russell were also speeding as well. But whatever the issue is with Drogovic, we've got past him, and now we're in clean air to chase after Mick Schumacher. On to lap 16, and only now is Russell getting past Drogovic, and the Alfa Romeo being a real mobile chicane, and it's all kicking off into turn 1 here with the guys fighting outside the top 10. We've now got Piastri around the outside of the Alfa Romeo, Gasly and Lawson fighting. It's side by side for Bottas and Stroll, and Hamilton and Kevin Magnussen, but Hamilton's slow and he's got an engine issue. His Mercedes is going to go up in smokes, and that is why he is down there fighting Kevin Magnussen. I was wondering what was going on there and why he was lacking some pace. Potentially this is actually why he was lacking pace this entire race. Maybe he had this engine issue coming the whole time. So Hamilton, the reigning champ, out of the Saudi Arabian GP. Meanwhile, back at the sharp end, Sainz still leads the way, but Sebastian Vettel is coming with DRS now onto lap 17. Sainz goes defensive. Vettel tried to make a move on the outside, but Sainz actually parked the car in a really good position just to maintain that racing line, whilst also hampering Vettel's attempt at an overtake. Leclerc's now closed up, Perez as well, so this well could be a 4-way fight for the top 4 positions, and it involves our car and Sebastian Vettel. How about this? This is absolutely amazing stuff to witness as we go on to lap 17, and Vettel is now going round the outside of Sainz for P1, the Spaniard who replaced him at Ferrari, now in the Haas, fighting Vettel, and our bankrupt, bare bones car is into the lead of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Leclerc is now having a go at his former Ferrari teammate on the outside, and this is maybe going to help Vettel out now, because Leclerc keeps his foot in on the inside, Sainz on the outside. These two are squabbling so much for P2 that Vettel has already got 1 second away in P1 and broken that crucial DRS 1 second you need for the rear flap to open. Sainz P2, Leclerc P3, but Vettel has already got a bit of breathing room now, and Perez is on the scene, the Alpine in P4, Tsunoda, Schumacher, myself behind in P7, and then Verstappen, Albon, Lando to round out the top 10, Piastri and Russell squabbling for the wooden spoon in P11, just outside the top 10, as we now are creeping onto the back of Mick Schumacher, and we're within DRS, so this will just keep us in this fight as we see Schumacher maybe have a go at Tsunoda. No, Tsunoda is having a go at Sergio Perez. I thought Yuki was going to get overtaken, but no, he's gone for a move himself on the Alpine. We now have a good run on Schumacher and maybe even the AlphaTauri. Could it be 3 wide into turn 1? We're going to back out of it though, because there's no point getting stuck in there, because that was never going to end well, and instead using our patience that we've learned over the last couple of episodes, 3 seasons in now, maybe not going for the same rash moves and instead going for the opportunistic move, catching Schumacher a little bit of sleep going into that left-hander. We're up into P6, and now we watch Perez versus Tsunoda, but the Alpine and AlphaTauri, they're 2 cars that are behind us in the R&D chart, so we should, in theory, be able to overtake these two. I don't know how Vettel is doing this in P1 right now, ahead of the Haas and Ferrari, but we should have the pace, in theory, to get this man, to get Checo in the Alpine, and then go and overtake the AlphaTauri. Can we go round the outside of the Mexican? Meanwhile, Sainz and Leclerc making contact. The Ferrari is shoved wide, and now this train is forming from P2 all the way down to P10, you know. A big train for the remaining points in this race. Sainz down the inside of Leclerc, Schumacher with the big dive. We lock up and we only narrowly avoid absolutely slamming Sergio Perez's rear wing there. We can count ourselves lucky, but it was all because of Schumacher's kamikaze move on the inside. We saw it last minute, and I knew if I kept my foot in there, we were going to have a crash with him. And then with the lockup we had, also nearly having a crash with Perez, so some really close near misses in the last stages of this Grand Prix, and there's going to be another one as we go opposite lock, and somehow, at such high speed, managed to catch the car. But now we feel the pressure from Alexander Albon. On the outside, the Red Bull goes, we defend, we keep the racing line. The 2 Red Bulls have made contact, and Max Verstappen is in the wall. It's a front wing off, debris on circuit, and that's enough debris to bring out a 3rd safety car in this race. But that was a mistake from us that put us on the back foot. Albon legitimately had a go at us. Fair play. We defended, we held strong on the racing line. He went wide, and well, Verstappen, it was actually his own fault a little bit of trying to be a bit too eager on the inside, and dived it down the inside whilst Albon was coming back onto the racing line. And the 2 Red Bulls have tripped over one another, not for the first time on this game, and one of them now has fallen foul, and Verstappen is going to be down the order and completely out of this race then. As we now watch the 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, our brand new teammate, kick off this Grand Prix once again onto lap 23. We're green again. He lost the lead he got. He's now under pressure from Sainz, and Sainz, could he snatch this away from Vettel in the last dying laps? We've got 3 laps to go. We're trying to have a look at Schumacher. Instead, we've got it all crossed up. The hard tyres a bit too cold on this restart. We haven't lit up the rears enough, and we've got all out of shape. And Albon is up into P7 now, but up ahead, Tsunoda is finding it equally hard to light up these hard tyres. Look at the gap from Tsunoda to the top 3. So Vettel, Sainz and Leclerc, they're going to be well safe from everyone else, so they will all be on the podium. But in what order, we're going to have to find out in the next 2 laps. We're back to our POV as we look to try and repass Albon. He lit up his tyres a lot better, but now we're in the groove, and we've actually compromised his line through the final bend, tightened up his corner. We've got on the power earlier and used a load of ERS, and we've got back ahead in P7. We'll go defensive into turn 1. He'll have a good look around the outside, but we'll defend with all our might because we've only got 2 laps left to maintain this top 7 and even have a go at Schumacher, because I still want to try and get him back. I haven't had my chance to get him back ever since that massive dive bomb he made on us just before the safety car period. Can we have a go now onto the last lap of the Grand Prix? No, we're just not close enough. Frustratingly, he's got a bit too much speed now. The safety cars allowed him to maybe save ERS, and all of us have plenty of ERS probably in the tank, and I just can't make a move as we have a look left, right, but ultimately have to stick behind and look at his rear wing. Meanwhile, at the sharp end, Sebastian Vettel. This is like the old Sebastian Vettel, isn't it? Because he's broken the 1 second again. Even though DRS, I think, is available on this lap, it doesn't matter, because like the old Sebastian Vettel in the V8 era, Vettel's broken the 1 second ahead of Sainz and Leclerc. And so as we go through these final few corners, we're still trying to apply the pressure to Mick Schumacher, but all eyes are going to be on the man in P1, probably going through the final corner right about now. We're looking behind this. Albon's still chasing us. We're still trying to chase Schumacher. We make a huge dive and nearly make a massive error by crashing into Schumacher, but we're going to maintain P7. We just can't quite get P7, but it doesn't matter because Sebastian bloody Vettel has just won another Grand Prix in Formula 1. He's won in our car. He's won the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. How the hell has he done that? What a crazy race. What a crazy race.
There's a few disappointed faces up and down the pit wall after that one, but not here. They secured a phenomenal victory. And talk to me. What do you think it was that sealed the win for them?
I think that smart tyre management on track and very smooth driving definitely assisted in their victory today. That combination meant they got the absolute maximum out of their tyres at all times.
Well, I'm thoroughly exhausted after the excitement of that race, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to our drivers here. They've worked hard to make it up there, and it's great to see them make their way onto the podium now.
Sebastian Vettel is back on the top step of the podium, and that was the old Vettel returning, literally just as he did back in those Red Bull days. Broke the DRS and then wasn't able to be caught. Control the race from there, out of DRS range. Literally textbook Vettel from the V8 era. That was unreal. I mean, what a crazy race anyway. I mean, the entire top 10, very topsy-turvy. None of the results you expected, you know. Sainz up there on a podium for Haas. Leclerc P3. Verstappen and Hamilton scoring no points. Russell scoring low points in this race as well. Albon and also both McLarens again. Both McLarens had another dismal race with Lando only P9 this time, let alone in the top 5. And Gasly again with a no points finish. Yeah, it's second race only, and we're still not really figured out the true pecking order because we've had another mental race with plenty of action, and this one even crazier because Vettel, with that free pit stop, he never looked back once he overtook Sainz, controlled the race from there, and just did insane. He's outperformed our car so much. He was 5/10 ahead of us, remember, in qualifying, and it shows. I mean, I had no pace to be anywhere near where he was. We're stuck fighting Schumacher and Albon at the end there, and it means that Sebastian Vettel, funny enough, takes the lead of the championship at round 2. I mean, it's still so early days, so let's not read into this, but Vettel P1 the championship. It's just ridiculous, and I don't know how on earth we've done this. We've finessed our way to the lead in constructors because you've got Mercedes, McLaren, even Red Bull underperforming, and Ferrari and ourselves, both our team and Ferrari, have stolen big points away from those top guys, and even Haas as well with Sainz's podium there. What a mental second race. Guys, if you have enjoyed it, hit the like button. Let me know what you think of that, Sebastian Vettel fans, in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.